Welcome to the Learn How Ducks Unlimited CA has fully transformed to NaturalONE as their only IDE for natural conference call. My name is Vanessa, and I'll be your operator for today's call. At this time, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Later, we will conduct a question-and-answer session. Please note that this conference is being recorded, and I will now turn the call over to Mr. Steve Woods. Mr. Woods, you may begin.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Just wanted to turn my email off here so I'm not getting messages coming across. Today we're going to talk about how Ducks Unlimited Canada uses NaturalONE. And so hopefully all of you that have joined us are here for that reason. We'll just jump right into it. You should be seeing a PowerPoint right now, and I'm just going to advance. Oh, here we go. So a little bit of background on Ducks Unlimited. We've been a Software AG customer since the early 80s. We've gone through various different types of computer hardware platforms, 4 different operating systems, moved all the way from a line editor, 24 by 80 editing screen, to single point of development under Windows, and now using NaturalONE. So we've come a long way there. Different character sets, EBCDIC and ASCII when we switched over to the Intel platform. So that presented some challenges with different collating sequences. Came across something I had never heard of before, big endian and little endian. The way data is stored differently from a mainframe to Intel. So just a little bit on what our environment looks like. Over on the left is my Windows 7 client that I'm demoing on today, and on the right is our Intel Linux server. And I think we have a pretty standard set of Software AG products installed on our server and on the client. So we're using Natural 833, which is the vanilla install of NaturalONE. And then we've got a few add-ons that we're going to be talking about today that you can see in that list. So just a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. Hopefully I'll demo for about 45 minutes, and then we can have 10 or 15 minutes of question and answer. Try to spend about half of my time on the top 2 topics, natural development and version control, and how we use those, and how we move our programs to production. And then we'll cover off some of the rest of those topics. So right now we'll just jump right into the demo. So hopefully you're seeing my screen right now, which is the NaturalONE Eclipse environment. And I'll explain a little bit about the way we use Natural. We've got about 15,000 objects in our Natural library, and we run everything out of system. And I know that's a little different than the way a lot of customers would run. And when we moved from single point of development to the Eclipse environment, we also had a need to start using version control. So we implemented both of those at the same time. So that was a fairly steep learning curve for us that the developers of NaturalONE at that time were in Canada, and they helped us through it. So they recommended that we use Subversion, and we really didn't have any experience with Subversion at all. So we kind of took the way we had used Natural for the last 30 years and probably came up with a hybrid version of how we use SPN. So over on the left, you'll see my projects. And we created one called Production. So if we just take a quick look at that, I'm not going to look at all the programs, but the bulk of our 15,000 objects sit in this APROD library, so our production library. And then every year when we do our fiscal year end, we archive a few programs. So since 2000, we've been archiving in here, and we have some programs that are specific to that fiscal year, but we still consider them production programs. So I won't click on this because it's going to open up and list about 15,000 objects. So that's our production environment, and I'm assuming that you know a little bit about NaturalONE, so I'm not going to go through all of that. But down on the bottom left is the server view from NaturalONE. So you can see all of our different user libraries, and I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. And you'll see that the bulk of our programs will sit under the system library. So talking a little bit about Subversion, one thing that we've really enjoyed working with NaturalONE is to be able to use it as our integrated development environment. And you can see all the different views that I have up here. So I'm going to take a look at our Subversion repository. So in Subversion, we've got a development area that is organized like this. We've got a personal section where different developers can keep track of their ad hocs in there. Yeah, just a little bit on our environment. We're a small shop. My software development team is 7 people, including myself. And we've got varying years of experience from about 34 years of experience all the way down to some of our younger guys are 6 or 7 years experience. So when we look at our production environment, it'll look very similar to what I just showed you in the server map. So all of our programs, all of our source programs are sitting in Subversion. And I guess that was the biggest leap for us. With NaturalONE, all of the source is duplicated on everybody's machine. And then we rely on Subversion to keep it all connected together and synchronized. So when we moved over to NaturalONE, we faced a problem in that, we always had the source on the server, but we wanted to make sure that people committed to using Subversion and NaturalONE, so we didn't want to leave that crutch behind of having the source in the server library. So it was a little bit scary for us, but we've got used to it. So we have 7 developers. I kind of look at it like, okay, now we've got 7 copies of the source, and then we rely on each other to make sure that we're not clobbering any source and that we're keeping it in sync. So there's our production library. And now we've organized our staging, so our programs that are in development, by the names of our developers. So if I just expand some of these, I can see that Allison is working on 8 different projects. And our naming conventions, the ones that are a number, those relate to our activity log system, where people have asked for specific changes to the program or to programs or new systems. And the ones that start with a T are help desk tickets. So those would be problems that have come in on our help desk, and now we've got a library set up to handle that specific problem. So if we expand each one of these, you get a sense of what we're currently working on. Or for me as the manager, I can come in and say, okay, we've got a number of different projects going on, and it looks like Rick has a fair amount going on, and he's handling a bunch of help desk tickets. So any of our developers can come in here and check one of these projects out. So if I wanted to, for instance, look at this lead sheet makeover restart, I would come in, right mouse click on that, check that project out, and that brought that project down into my local environment. So that's a brief overview of the repository. If I switch back to the NaturalONE view, I'll see that project that I just checked out. And if we take a look at that project, every natural project you look at will look similar to this, where it'll have at least one natural library. And then here's all the different programs that Allison is working on in that project. So I simply, if I want to see that program, click on it, and it'll open it up in the editor. And this is interesting over here, all of the dependencies for this program. So I know this program is using two PDAs, PAE 020P and PAE 020R. And various files, the projects file, the landscape file, it's calling this subprogram. So if I want to look at that subprogram, I can double click on it, take a look at it. Now I can see the dependencies for it, and I can keep drilling down. So that's really nice to be able to drill down into, especially if you use a lot of subprograms, you can drill and keep going down. So now that I'm at SYN 093, I can click on this button and see all the programs that are using it. So I see SYN 091, but maybe I want to explore, okay, what's this other program doing? And then I can continue on down that chain. So it's pretty intuitive to be able to view that. Now, over on this side, we use construct, and I won't focus a lot of effort on that, but I'll show you a bit. So with construct, those lines start with **** sag. So if I want to go to the change history section in that program, parameter data area, start a program, I can click on these references and it'll take me to that spot in the program. If I go over to this program and right mouse click on it, you can see all of the different things that you can do with this. So one of the things, I'll just briefly show you construct. I don't know how many customers that would be on today would be using that product, but it's an integral part of the way we do our business. So for this one, this is our project segments object, and if I just next my way through the screen, it takes you through a wizard where basically we're defining what file we're working on, what key, what PDAs does it use, and then I can click on finish, and it will regenerate that program. So that regeneration is actually happening on the server, and then it comes back to my local area, and then I can save it. So you can see that the tags over here have changed. So now I need to do an upload or a stow on that program. And to move it, the object over to the server, I would then click on this button up here, but I actually don't want to do that because I don't want to mess Allison's project up on her. So let me just close some of these down. And I'll go into a project that I know I'm working on that won't cause anybody else any problems. So for instance, CBSP 020 is an object that needs to be uploaded to the server. So I had mentioned before about how we organize our projects. So I know that this one came in on a help desk ticket because it starts with a T, and then the 7-digit number after is the help desk number. And when I created this project, I created it with a natural library of the same name. So when I upload this object to the server, it's going to be uploaded, so T324415. So if I go ahead and click upload here, okay, I'm getting an error. Okay, I know, okay, on this program I've got an error on it, so I'm just going to delete it off the server. I'll use a different program. So if I refresh this, we can see that there's no programs. Hopefully this one will upload correctly. So notice that it changed, the upload still disappeared, and if I go down and take a look at this library, we'll see that that object has been moved down into that test library. So the way we do our testing is we use step lives in Natural, and so when we get a user to test, they're only going to be testing this one change to this one program, but all of the rest of the programs are available through a step lib to the system library. So that way we can really isolate only the changes that we're making, and we can isolate that user in on that library. So in our browser-based environment, that user will click on a screen where they can switch to this library, do their testing, and then we can go ahead and move that into production. So when we move to production, or actually I'll just show you a search. So I'm going to do a Control-Shift-R, and it brings up the search panel. I'm going to search for that program, CBW412B. We can see that it's in the production library, but then it's also in the staging library and then in my local library. So we use, each of our developers is responsible for, when they bring a program out of production, to do this type of a search so that they can tell whether anybody else has that is using that program or not. And so a couple times a day, for sure at least once, they need to synchronize. So I'm going to show you that step now. I'm going to highlight the production and staging folders, right-mouse click on that, and do a team synchronize with repository. So this will just take a little minute or two. So what it's doing is it's comparing my local version of those two folders to what's in the Subversion repository. And lots of our developers will just click the update button and update automatically. Because I'm not developing as much, I like to see what changes are going on first. And this will give me the opportunity of committing my changes to Subversion or importing changes that other people have made. So that step's just about done. If I take a look, here's all the programs that have been modified since I did a last synchronization. So for this demo, I had left it for a day or so that I could, so that it would work for the demo. So this is our production environment. And another thing that it tells me is that, okay, Allison, Chris, Jason, and Lawrence are working actively on these projects. So I'm going to click on Update All Incoming Changes, and that will get my local version synchronized with the repository. So we'll just let this finish. So now I can see all those changes have gone away, and if I synchronized again, that would nothing would show up there. Just going to slide another screen across here for a minute, and move out of the production environment, here's an open source tool that we use called WebSVN. So what WebSVN does is looks at that subversion repository and gives me some visibility on it. So I can look, and in the last 7 days, all of these changes have been done in Subversion. So let me just refresh this to make sure I've got the most recent version. So 48 minutes ago, I know Lawrence put this change into production. So make IS request user-friendly. And I know that it came in on an activity log because of the numbering. If I scroll down, this change actually is a change I did on a ticket because it starts with a T. So if I wanted to take a quick look at what the changes were, I can click on the difference. And here it'll give me a summary or detail of all the changes. So this particular program, ISW012B, the ones in brown were the old version and the green is the new version. So we can quickly scan through, and then here's another program that was changed. This particular one, these 3 lines were taken out and the green ones were put in. So I can get a real quick view of what that entailed. I can also click on the revision number and see all the individual programs, and now look at the differences for that specific program. So now the programs are side by side. So revision 7506, this is what the program looked like. This is what it looks like now. And it's doing a line-by-line comparison. So this is a generated program, and I can tell that, okay, it just removed this comment and put a new comment in. And if I keep scrolling down, some minor changes. This new variable was defined. Some more logic went in here. So I can take a look at that program and quickly say, okay, it looks like they knew what they were doing, or maybe we're having a problem right now, and I can take a look at that and say, well, are we sure we did that right? So that's another example of where we're able to tie some open source software in this WebSVN that gives us a view of those repositories. So flipping back to the NaturalONE environment, and I'm going to do that search again. So again, I still have that in my staging environment because I haven't updated it, and I'm seeing all of the other places that program exists in. So a little bit about, let's say I was going to move these programs into production. That's where we use ANT, which is part of NaturalONE. So I'm going to take these programs and I want to move them to production. But this was an ad hoc that I wrote that I don't want to move. And notice how it's highlighted, or it's grayed out. Well, if I was to right mouse click on that and NaturalONE, I've got it marked as exclude. If I include that, it will be included in my ANT build. So this particular one and this program, I don't want those included. Oops, maybe I have to do them one at a time. Oh, I've already got that one marked. Okay, so those two are excluded. A little bit, I guess, a little bit more about the environment before I do that. If I look at this project and look at the properties of it, you can see that I've got two project references. So I've got this test project referring to the production environment as well as we need it to construct runtime. So when I look at all my references over here, I know that this reference to www.stdp in 412B is pulling from the production library. And it's because of this project reference that it's doing that. And then also in Natural, under my step libs, I'm pointing at that APROD natural library in the production folder. And then for runtime, I'm connecting to the server, and that's how it's able to resolve all of those references at runtime if I was to run an ad hoc from here. So if I was wanting to move this program to production, or this project to production, there's two steps that I would do. I would take all this source that I want to move, right mouse click on it, copy it, go up to the production library, and I would paste it into the source folder. So what that's going to do is, in my local version of production, is put the source into there. Then I would do a subversion commit and commit that up to the SVN repository. And then at that point, all of the other developers would see these changes that I made. It would show up on web SVN. So I'm not going to do that in this case because I don't want to send those to production. The next step to get the object into production would be to do an ant build on this project. So I'm going to right mouse click and do a new other and deploy NaturalONE. And I'll just take you through the steps of what we do here. So we do a full deployment because we want to deploy all of these objects. We do a stow, and then we delete the source on the server after upload. So what this ant build will do is stow the program, move it over to the system library, then delete the source because we don't want any of the source on the server. So if I just next through here, the rest of this is pretty straightforward. I want to make sure that I do my localhost connection, or sorry, my server connection. In this case, I don't need a step lib. And this is where we enable mapping. So we say, take it from after you've stowed it in this library, now move it to the system library. And then we'll do finish. So what that does is it creates this deploy XML. Which I don't normally open that, so maybe I shouldn't have done that this time either. Okay, so this is what it built. But again, I would never look at that. I would just go through the wizard. I would right mouse click on that deploy XML and then say run it as an ant build. But I won't do that because this would actually move those programs to production. So what will happen after I click that ant build is down in the console file, it will show me what it's doing, and I can see each of those objects being stowed in that test library. And then I see them being moved over into system, both the source and the object, and then see the object being deleted. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. You could probably spend a full day course in kind of going through how we ended up in this and showing you, how to do it on your system. But I want to kind of take the last 15 minutes and show you some of the other tools that we use. So let me just, in this same environment, let me just flip back over to here. We can see another tool that we use is Carica.com for managing our projects. It's an agile management tool. So when I was preparing this presentation, I got all of my developers to help me with the various things. So as I was going through and talking about this, I'm moving things over into the done column. So the next thing I wanted to show was the wireframe sketcher. just slide that back across. So if we go over to the wireframing, this is again an add-on, and if you go to wireframesketcher.com, one of our developers, Allison, found this product out on the web, and it either runs, I think it runs under Windows and Linux, but it also runs under Eclipse. So we were trying to commit to the Eclipse environment as our development environment, and I'll just show you a couple of wireframing examples. So here's one we were making, doing a demo on the national tracking system. And so here's a storyboard. There's a bunch of screens, assets that we can pull into this library. And again, I could spend a lot of time just on this one tool, but I just kind of want to give you an overview of how we use it. So here's a screen, and we're going to link from that front screen to a screen further down. And this, when I click on this, it will keep carrying me on to the next screen. So we can make a workflow diagram for our user, and then send it out to them and put it in. If I put it into presentation mode, I won't do that here because it moves it over to my other screen. But I can quickly go through, run that presentation, and then I can export it to PDF. I can share it online. And I just want to show you an example of another one that we've done for creating a manual. This is a whole other topic. This is our content management system and how we've integrated Natural into it via PHP. But if I go onto the system and look at this training manual, one of our developers, Chris, created this training manual using the wireframe sketcher, then exported it using HTML. So there's a bit of a table of contents, and then some screenshots with some diagramming and descriptions of what we're doing. So he taught a course, and then this was the course material that the people took away from that course. So they can come back anytime and run this as a web screen. So that's pretty useful way of using, again, the same NaturalONE environment. You could use this just with Eclipse. In this case, it really doesn't have anything to do with Natural, but we use it for our Natural development to share changes with our user. That's wireframing. What was up next here? Oh, database development. If we go back to look at a different view, and let's take a look at database development. And I'm going to, I guess I should back up a little bit. We have a product installed called SQL Gateway, a Software AG product that makes database look like an SQL database. So we've got that installed on our Intel server. And then in this database connections, which is part of Eclipse, you can map your server into the NaturalONE environment. So what else in our DBA did is took the Software AG tables that are in the demo database, put them in our main database just so I could do this demo this morning. And if we take a look at the vehicles file, you can right mouse click on that and click on sample contents, and you'll see down below, I'll just make that full screen. This was the Eclipse environment viewing our database on the Intel server. And you get a sense of how quick that was as well. So there was the result, and this was the SQL that it generated for that. Now, most of our people aren't SQL experts, but that was a little bit quicker than writing a natural program to do that same thing. And if we just flip back and take a look at that vehicle file, what Allison actually did with this is, let me right mouse click on it, look at the columns. Here's all the fields on that file. And then if we look at a project, let's see. Go back into NaturalONE. Here's a development project that Allison had. So she wrote some SQL. So let's take a look at this SAG Vehicles SQL. Wrote some SQL that made it a little bit more friendly. So instead of showing it the make in uppercase, we want to show it in mixed case. And instead of showing the first name and employee name, we're concatenating first name blank and employee name together. And if I want to run this, I would come in, right mouse click, and execute all. And you can see down in the bottom, there's the SQL, and then here was the result. So in this case, she actually joined the vehicle file with the employee file to create a new report. So that's pretty cool. If I was to go over to Excel, and do the same thing. So I want to create a query from Microsoft Query. Choose my data source. Sorry, it keeps coming up on my other screen and I have to move it across. So it's just connecting to the server now. As soon as it's finished that, I'll slide it over to the screen so that you can see it. So I connect to the database. And now it shows me a list of files. So I want to take a look at the SAG vehicle file. I'm going to use all of the fields. I can filter it a certain way if I want. Let's sort it by employee name. And it's importing that data into Microsoft, or sorry, into Excel. So I'm working at home right now, so I'm going over a network to do this query. When I ran it last night, it was a little bit quicker than this, but hopefully it'll come up any time now. So there you can see the result of that query. And now I can sort on any one of these, or filter on these, sort largest to smallest. Allison figures that Software AG should be putting some new cars into the database, but that she doesn't believe that these guys are still driving 1977 vehicles. That's database development. How am I doing for time here? I got about 5 minutes left. Let's just go take a look at what else we wanted to cover off. Couple of other small things. If we go back to NaturalONE, And let's switch to the Remote System Explorer environment, or sorry, perspective. So I'm going to log on to the server. Let's close this window down. And now I can have visibility of my local drives or any of my network drives. And then I can also look at files that are on the system as well. So in this particular section, if we go into this DU DBS folder and DU files and data load, what we use this area for is we do a lot of work with other vendors where they FTP files directly into our system. And then we have natural batch machines running, waking up every 5 minutes or every 5 seconds, depending on which folder it's looking at, and monitoring to see these files coming in, and then we load them into the database. So if I take a look at this and just refresh it, I can see those files. And then if we go over and look in our system, we have this system monitor, and this is what all of our screens look like. They're all browser-based, all written in Natural using Construct. Well, we have some Linux commands that give us the health of our system, and any of our developers can pull it up. So I can see that our processor is currently running at 9%. Well, and that there's 29 files in this DUC folder, and if I click on that 29, these are the same 29 files that I was looking at through Remote System Explorer. So any of these files, I could go take a look at it to make sure I don't pull up one that has credit cards in it. Let's try this one. So I can double click on that file and see the contents of that file. While over in Natural, I can do that same thing. So here's that same, no, that wasn't it. Maybe I clicked on the wrong one. Anyways, I've got that visibility from Natural as well. And our DBAs also use this same area to do the predict cards and putting those into subversion. So they use the Remote System Explorer can be used to look anywhere in your system, across any of your file servers or any of your local data. And I guess the last thing that I'll just cover in the last minute that I have is we also have some PHP programs that we, like I was telling you, we integrate into our production environment for our staff intranet. We use Joomla for our content management system, which is PHP based, and integrate our Natural programs directly into it. So if we take a look at a project here, I think I had one that was set up as a PHP project. This one. And take a look at a program in here. So here's a PHP program inside of Construct, and so I want to see what this DU Natural program, I can right mouse click, open that declaration, it goes and pulls that program up. And again, now I'm working in a completely different development environment, but still using the same tool. So that's a brief overview of how we use NaturalONE. It really worked well for us. We had a little bit of trouble with integrating Construct into it, but we've got all of those problems figured out, and our developers have embraced it. There's a few learning curve issues related to testing that are different than single point of development, but all in all, I think it's worked really well for us. One other thing I guess that I could show you, that I've got on my screen right here. Here's a particular program and the history of it in SVN. And I can select those two programs, right mouse click, and compare them with each other. And similar to the web SVN that we were looking at earlier, this will bring it up locally, and I can compare those two programs side by side so I can see what changes have happened with those and tab through those changes. So I can see that this comment was new. That variable has changed. So tab your way through that. I think I'm done for my presentation, and I guess, Vanessa, you'll open it up for question and answer.
Yes, thank you. We will now begin the question and answer session. If you have a question, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. And if you're using a speakerphone, you may need to pick up the handset first before pressing the numbers. So once again, if you have a question, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. I am standing by for questions. As a reminder, to queue up for a question, please press star, then 1 on your touch-tone phone. And we do have a question in queue from Richard Zollner. Please go ahead, Richard.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for this presentation. I guess your environment that developers were coming from was the natural development environment on the PC, and it wasn't, say, from the 3270 environment, at least the last place you were working.
Well, I've worked at Dux now for 27 years, and this is the only place that I've used natural. So, yeah, we used the 3270 environment for my first 20 years here. And then we used single point of development for 3 or 4 years, and now NaturalONE for the last year.
Okay, so you had 3 or 4 years with SPOD in between, sort of as a transition.
Right.
Okay, just checking.
But I don't think we would have. I think you could jump directly from 3270 to NaturalONE.
Well, that's a bigger leap.
Well, NaturalONE wasn't available for us, at that time. And
sure.
Really, when we came to licensing our products, we wanted to keep going in the direction that Soft4AG was going, and the only way we felt we would do it is to drop our SPOD license and jump in with NaturalONE, and it's been a good move for us.
Yes, I can see it's obvious that you all are well integrated with it. Didn't really have any other questions. I'm just getting used to the environment. I've just been using it for a couple of years now, and but we don't have it out with all the developers yet.
Yeah, I guess our biggest change was adding the subversion component to it and
right.
getting used to handling that source. But what it did is we used to test every program out of the same library, and that was a problem for us in that you'd have conflicting changes, and you were never quite confident, that you were only testing the changes that you wanted to. So by going to this, it gave us multiple test environments, and it really allowed us to isolate our code for different projects. But it really relies on all the developers making sure they synchronize once or twice a day. Really, we have a rule: if you're going to pull out a new program, that you need to synchronize first.
Yeah, that subversion introduction is will be a major change. We're using N2O on the mainframe, and getting over to Subversion will take some investigation and documentation for development, I believe.
Yeah, and NaturalONE, it works very well with Natural Development Server. Like you can see as I was bouncing around there, you kind of even forget that it's communicating with the server and when it's doing that because it's integrated so well.
Can you bring up your machine characteristics there?
Oh, sure.
Just so I can see what...
that slide?
No, your local machine. What type of machine are you?
Sorry.
Have you got a solid state drive? Have you got 16 gig of RAM?
Oh, I see. Okay. Where
You're
is
bouncing
that
around
under?
very quickly. It's under,
Sorry.
just under, right click on my computer and
Okay. And then properties?
Properties.
Should be able to see that
So
now.
you got 8 gig, and I just got upgraded to 8 gig with Windows 7 64-bit. So, okay, same thing as your hard drive, a flash, a solid state, or is it a regular hard drive?
I can't remember now. I think it might be a hybrid.
Okay.
But yeah, it definitely requires memory. You need memory, and the changes that have happened with NaturalONE over the last year has helped. We struggled with some memory issues at the beginning, and not to anymore. I was looking at a program last night that was 6,000 lines long. It was a generated program, and those ones we used to have trouble with, but don't anymore.
Great. Well, we have some construct, but it's fairly limited in its usage. It's not really open to everybody. It's just have a couple administrators that generate some reports. So I'm not expecting that we'll have too much going on there. Well,
yeah,
thanks.
Construct was, yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, Construct was, we can access it through NaturalONE, but you don't have to use Construct to use NaturalONE.
Sure,
but we are Construct Shop because all of our applications are web-based, and we really rely on the objects within Construct to separate the user interface from the business layer.
Well, we're looking at our first step being modifying our mainframe application to be natural for Ajax, and but our mainframe still being the server and still running all of our batch through the mainframe. So taking that first step would be, getting the end users to the browser and but keeping our batch implementation the same. We've got significant batch processing. Can you think of any? You all have been off the mainframe for a while.
Yeah, about 3 years. It's interesting because we're on the web, but we're actually using Natural Batch. Is every program that we run on the web starts natural and stops natural when it's running. So it runs as a stateless environment. So I'm not really sure if I can comment on how you're using Batch.
Well, our batch would be, mainframe JCL still going through.
Right. Yeah, and I don't have any experience with that.
Okay. Yeah, I see it as a something that we can keep intact through getting through this transition, and then be able to be totally independent be totally in natural for Java with the online system, but the batch would all still be the same, and then we could focus on the batch later on, and in fact a move to perhaps open system server as opposed to the mainframe being the server as a later step.
And we could do a whole course on converting. We went through that a few years ago, and there's lots of things to do there, but it was a good move for us.
Getting off the mainframe to, did you go to Windows or Linux?
Linux.
Linux, okay.
Yeah, SUSE Linux.
Okay. Okay, I don't want to dominate this, but appreciate all your input and the presentation, and look forward to having it to review later on.
Thanks.
And thank you. We do have a few more questions in queue. Do you have time to take them?
Sure.
Okay, great. Our next question is from Joey Ventura. Please go ahead.
Hi, Steve. I came in at the tail end of your presentation. I'm with the California Department of State Hospitals. First of all, are you going to, well, can I get your email address? Maybe I can just send you my questions directly and you can respond to them.
Sure. It's s_woods@ducks.ca.
All right. I guess you mentioned something about you converted and it will be, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say it's a huge task, but how long did it take you to convert from the mainframe to the natural server, NaturalONE?
Well, we converted. We did it in 2 steps. We went from VM to Linux on the mainframe, and we were like that for about 3 years, and then we switched from Linux on the mainframe to Linux on Intel. So it was, I don't know, probably a couple months to convert that first time when we went from VM to Linux. And then, you know, it was not quite as much effort when we moved over to Intel. And that was where we really saw the benefits.
Okay. We have some instances here wherein, you know, our code right now is, there are some old codes that are written in report mode and some objects that don't have any source. Is NaturalONE able to pick those up?
Well, I don't know about the ones that don't have source, but I wouldn't think so because it's just a text editor. But yeah, we have a mixture of reporting and structured mode, so that's no problem.
Okay. When you're doing NaturalONE, it's your development environment. Are you using that as the presentation for the client as well?
And NaturalONE is, for our user?
Yes.
No, the user is.
We use
or you mean the developer?
I know that you're using it for your development, but here we're using Kicks as, you know, development as well as presentation for our UI.
No, our UI is all browser-based. So we created models that generate HTML, and then on our Linux server, it's an Apache web server that's just processing requests.
Okay, so those objects that you had before were mainframe based. How long did it take to convert them to a web based? And was that done via construct, or was that done or NaturalONE converted those?
No, NaturalONE didn't convert those. Construct by its nature with construct objects, they don't have any UI in them. It's all messaging from the construct object. And so what we did is we built pieces around that, other objects, just for handling the user interface that communicate with the object.
All right. Again, I'll probably send you a few more of my questions via email. And thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you. Our next question comes from Jacob Rothenberger. Please go ahead.
Hi. What benefits have you seen from using a source control system like Subversion? What kind of practical benefits do y'all use it? How do y'all use it practically?
Well, I guess what was happening before when we were, again, like I said, we're a small shop, so I don't know what larger shops would do. But we had 7 people, and lots of times we would be overwriting each other's code, working in the same test library or having a version out in another test library. So really, one of the big benefits is we're doing that a lot less often. And when we do it, we can go back into Subversion and pull the old source. So what we used to do is we used to back up that source every night. And so we kind of have one version back. And so now, if we change the program 15 times in production, we've got all 15 copies of that and can easily do those compares. So I would say our users have benefited from it because we don't overwrite each other's changes as much. And if we do it, because we're not following procedures right, it's easy to recover from, and then it's easy to correct somebody that might be one of the developers that might not have done something, whereas before it was always kind of an unknown as to how that happened. And really the other benefit of using NaturalONE with Subversion is all that source is now sitting locally on every developer's machine. So if they're offline, they can actually look at that code without having to be connected to the server.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you. Our next question comes from Jim Gilpin. Please go ahead, Jim.
Steve, I was curious about your library structure. After the fact, do you go in and clean up the libraries, or have you investigated the private mode library set?
I guess I didn't mention that part. Yeah, after we move to production, we do go into Subversion and delete that test project, so that when you look at Subversion, it should only be the active projects. But no, someone else was talking to us about private versus shared mode the other day, and no, I'd be interested in learning more about that. What can you tell me about it?
Well, one of the pieces that the private mode does for you is it generates the library name on the fly, and it creates the artificial step lib between you and the other step libs that are out there. And so you don't have to create the library and move your objects into it.
Okay. Now, are you having to work with the full library of programs, or like you said, the step libs still work then?
Pardon me, Jim, your line is still open. Perhaps you're muted on your end?
The objects that I have in my library are only the ones that I need, and it then step libs into the other libraries that are available to me.
Oh, okay. So yeah, that's something that would be, we'll check into that. So have you used Subversion for a long time?
We're using Git, actually, instead of Subversion.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the person that I was talking to the other day was also using Git. And we, like I said, we didn't really have any experience with any version control, and that was the one that was recommended to us.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you. I do not see any further questions in queue at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you, Steve, so much for your presentation today and all the great questions.
Oh, you're welcome.
Great. This concludes our conference for today. Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.